What if the homeless man who fixed a billionaire's car on a dark, empty highway was about to become the love of her life? What if the woman who
Are
had
you
everything,
okay?
money, power,
need help?
respect, discovered that the one thing she truly needed was standing in torn clothes under a flickering streetlight, asking for nothing in return? This is Elmerem Stories, where African folktales meet real-life lessons that will change how you see the world. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Your support keeps these stories alive. Now, let's begin. The night was thick with silence. Amara sat inside her black Range Rover on the Lekki Ape Expressway, her hands gripping the steering wheel as frustration bubbled in her chest. The engine had died without warning. No sound, no movement, just darkness pressing against the tinted windows and the hum of distant traffic fading into the humid Lagos night. She was alone. The business meeting in Victoria Island had run late, too late. Now here she was, stranded on one of the loneliest stretches of road between the city's glittering towers and the quieter outskirts where street vendors closed early and Okada riders disappeared after sunset. Amara pressed the ignition again. Nothing. She dialed her mechanic. No answer. She called her driver. His phone rang endlessly. Her personal assistant didn't pick up either. Panic crept in slowly, like water rising in a locked room. Then she saw him. A figure emerged from the shadows near an uncompleted building across the road. He moved carefully, not rushing, but with purpose. Amara's heart tightened. She locked the doors instinctively. The man came closer, his silhouette thin and ragged under the pale glow of a dying street lamp. He knocked gently on her window. Amara hesitated. Her hand hovered over the door lock. But something in the way he stood, patient, non-threatening, made her crack the window just enough to hear him. "Madam, you need help?" His voice was calm, respectful, not the voice of someone looking to harm her. Amara studied him through the glass. He wore a faded shirt with holes near the collar, dusty trousers that had seen better years, and slippers held together by fraying straps. His face was lean, his eyes tired but gentle. He looked hungry. He looked homeless. But he didn't look dangerous. "My car stopped," she said carefully. "The engine just died." He nodded. "I can check it for you. I know a small thing about cars." Amara's instinct screamed caution. But what choice did she have? Wait until morning? Hope someone trustworthy passed by? She glanced at the empty road, then back at him. "Okay," she said quietly, unlocking the bonnet release. The young man, his name was Tunde, though she didn't know it yet, walked to the front of the vehicle and lifted the hood. Amara stepped out, watching him work under the dim light of her phone's flashlight. He didn't ask for tools. He didn't complain. He simply studied the engine with the focus of someone who had learned survival through skill, not privilege. After a moment, he spoke. "The battery terminal is loose. The wire disconnected. That's why your car died." Amara blinked. "That's it." He nodded, adjusting the connection with his bare hands. "Try it now." She slid back into the driver's seat, turned the key, and the engine roared to life. Smooth. Strong. As if nothing had ever been wrong. Amara sat frozen, staring at the dashboard in disbelief. How could a man dressed in rags, living in the shadows of an unfinished building, diagnose and fix what her expensive German-trained mechanic couldn't even explain over the phone? She stepped out of the car again. Tunde was already closing the bonnet, wiping his hands on his trousers. "Thank you," Amara said, her voice softer now. She reached into her purse and pulled out a stack of crisp Naira notes. "Please, take this." Tunde looked at the money, then at her. He shook his head. "I don't want money, Ma." Amara froze. "What?" "Kindness isn't business," he said quietly. "Help should come from the heart." His words hung in the air like something sacred. Amara had spent her entire adult life in boardrooms where everything had a price. Contracts, deals, loyalty, love even. Yet here stood a man with nothing, refusing payment for something he had freely given. She didn't know what to say. Tunde turned to leave, but Amara's voice stopped him. "Wait." He paused. She pulled a business card from her wallet and held it out. "Come to my office tomorrow. Amara Oil and Gas. Ikoyi. Ask for me." Tunde stared at the card, then at her face, as if trying to decide whether this was real or some cruel joke the universe was playing on him. "Why?" he asked. "Because," Amara said, her throat tight with an emotion she couldn't name. "Someone who fixes things deserves more than sleeping on the street." Tunde took the card carefully, like it might vanish if he held it too tightly. He nodded once, then disappeared back into the shadows. Amara sat in her car for a long time after he left, staring at the empty road ahead. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from something deeper. She had met countless men in her life. Bankers, politicians, CEOs, men who wore Italian suits and spoke 3 languages, men who owned estates and flew private jets. But none of them had ever made her feel the way this homeless stranger just had. That night, Tunde returned to his wooden shelter behind the uncompleted building. The structure was barely standing, planks nailed together, a torn tarpaulin for a roof, and a thin mat on the ground. He lay down and stared at the business card in the faint moonlight seeping through the cracks. Amara Oil and Gas. He had heard of the company. Everyone in Lagos had. It was one of the biggest in the country. And the woman he had just helped, was she the owner? His stomach growled. He hadn't eaten all day. The temptation to go back and ask for money clawed at him. But something in her voice, in the way she had looked at him, told him this was different. This wasn't pity. This was an opportunity. He folded the card carefully and tucked it into his pocket. Tomorrow he would go. Tomorrow, he would see if the woman with the luxury car and the kind eyes was real, or just another dream that would disappear with the morning sun. The next morning, Tunde washed himself at a public tap, wore the cleanest shirt he had, and made his way to Ikoyi. The towering glass building of Amara Oil and Gas stood like a fortress among the city's elite. He approached the gate nervously. 2 security guards blocked his path immediately. "Where you day go?" one of them barked. I have appointment with Madame Amara," Tunde said, holding up the business card. The guards burst into laughter. "Appointment? You?" The second guard sneered. "Omo, comment for here before we call police. This no be place for beggars." Tunde's face burned with shame, but he stood his ground. "She gave me this card herself. Please, just call her." "Call who? You think say madam get time for people like you?" The first guard shoved him back. "If you no comment, we go deal with you." A small crowd of employees gathering for the morning shift began to watch. Some whispered. Some laughed. Tunde felt his chest tighten. Then, from the 3rd-floor window, Amara saw him. Her heart dropped. She grabbed her phone, called the security desk, and her voice came through sharp and cold. "Let him in. Now." The guards froze. Within seconds, Amara was striding across the lobby in her tailored navy suit, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Every eye in the building turned to her. She stopped in front of Tunde, looked him in the eye, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "He is my guest. Let him in." The guards stammered apologies. The crowd parted, and as Amara led Tunde toward the elevator, she felt the weight of 100 judging stares pressing against her back. But she didn't care, because for the first time in years, she was doing something that felt right. Amara's office was a world Tunde had never imagined stepping into. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Lagos skyline. Leather chairs, a mahogany desk, abstract art on the walls. The air smelled like expensive perfume and power. Tunde stood near the door, afraid to touch anything, afraid to even breathe too loudly. Amara gestured to a chair. "Please, sit." He hesitated, then obeyed. She sat across from him, her expression softer now, away from the crowd. "Tell me about yourself. Your real story." Tunde's throat tightened. No one had ever asked him that before. Not like this. Not with genuine interest. "I grew up in Ajagunal," he began slowly. "My parents died when I was 12. Fever took my mother. My father, accident at the docks. I had no relatives who wanted me. I lived with neighbors for a while, but when I finished secondary school, there was no money for anything else." Amara listened without interrupting. "I learned mechanics from an old man in the neighborhood. Baba Sool. He let me watch him work, taught me how engines breathe, how to listen to a car's heartbeat." Tunde's voice grew quieter. "When he died 2 years ago, I had nowhere to go. I've been surviving, the way you saw me." Silence filled the room. Not uncomfortable, just heavy with truth. Amara leaned forward. "How old are you?" 24. She nodded. "You're too young to be living like that. Too smart. Too skilled." "Madam, respect is not something people like me can afford," Tunde said bitterly. "The world doesn't see skill when you're dressed in rags." "I see it," Amara said firmly. "And I'm offering you a chance." She explained her plan. A job in the company's vehicle maintenance workshop. A private tutor to prepare him for polytechnic or university admission. A room in the staff quarters so he would never sleep on the street again. Tunde stared at her, his eyes glistening. "Why are you doing this?" "Because," Amara said softly, "someone once told me that help should come from the heart. And because I believe people deserve second chances." Tunde broke down. Right there in her office. He wept. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of being seen as human again. Amara stood, walked around the desk, and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Welcome to Amara Oil and Gas, Tunde." The first few weeks were difficult. Tunde adjusted to his new life slowly. He swept the workshop floors, organized tools, assisted the senior mechanics, and absorbed everything like a sponge. His tutor, Mr. Adebayo, was shocked by how quickly Tunde grasped mathematics and English. "This boy is brilliant," he told Amara one afternoon. "He just needed a chance." But not everyone celebrated Tunde's transformation. Some staff members whispered in the corridors. "The street boy who seduced the CEO. She must be lonely to bring in someone like that. He's probably using her." You know how these people are. Chioma, Amara's personal assistant, was the most vocal. One morning, she cornered Amara in her office. "Madam, people are talking," Chioma said, her voice laced with concern, or was it judgment? "They're saying you've lost focus. That you're too close to him." Amara's jaw tightened. "Tunde is an employee. What I do to help him is none of their business." "But it is," Chioma insisted. "You're the CEO. Your reputation affects the entire company. People are starting to question your decisions." "Let them question," Amara said coldly. "I didn't build this company by caring what people think." But the words stung more than she admitted. That evening, Amara invited Tunde to lunch at a quiet restaurant in Lekki Phase 1. She wanted to check on him, away from the prying eyes at work. They sat near the window, the afternoon sun casting golden light across the table. "How are you settling in?" Amara asked. "Better than I ever imagined," Tunde said. "But people stare at me, Ma. Even when I'm in clean clothes, they still see the boy from the street." "Ignore them," Amara said. "You're not that boy anymore." "But I am," Tunde replied quietly. "And maybe I always will be. To them." Amara reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "You're more than what they see. Don't forget that." The touch lingered longer than it should have. Tunde looked up at her, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them. Something warm. Something dangerous. Amara pulled her hand back quickly, clearing her throat. "Let's eat." But the damage was done. The seed was planted. Over the next month, their conversations grew deeper. Amara found herself looking forward to their lunches, to the way Tunde spoke about fixing engines like they were living things, to the way he listened to her talk about the pressures of running a company. He was different from the men in her world. He didn't want anything from her. He didn't flatter her or try to impress her. He simply saw her, and she saw him. But the rumors grew uglier. One afternoon, Amara's board members called an emergency meeting. They sat around the long conference table, their faces stern. "Amara," Mr. Okonkwo began, "we need to discuss your association with one of the workshop staff." Amara's blood ran cold. "Association? The young man you brought in from the street," another board member added. "People are talking. Clients are asking questions. This is becoming a distraction." "Tunde is an employee," Amara said sharply. "Nothing more." "Then why are you seen with him outside of work?" Mr. Okonkwo pressed. "Why is he receiving special treatment?" "Madam CEO, we respect you, but this is affecting the company's image." Amara stood abruptly. "This meeting is over." She walked out, her heart pounding with rage and shame. That night, Tunde couldn't sleep. He lay on the bed in his small room in the staff quarters, staring at the ceiling. The whispers had reached him too. The mechanics mocked him. Madam's pet. Golden boy. Street rat playing dress up. He thought about Amara. About the way she smiled at him. The way she touched his hand. The way she defended him. And he realized something that terrified him. He was falling in love with her. But how could someone like him, someone who came from nothing, ever deserve someone like her? The weight of it crushed him. 2 nights later, Tunde made a decision. He packed the few belongings he had, his tutor's notes, the clean clothes Amara had bought him, and the business card that had started everything. He left a short note on his bed. Asterisk, thank you for everything. But I don't belong in your world. I'm sorry. Asterisk. And then, in the quiet darkness before dawn, Tunde walked out of the staff quarters and disappeared into the city. When Amara arrived at the office the next morning, Chioma handed her the note. Amara's hands trembled as she read it. "Where is he?" she demanded. "No one knows, Ma. He left before sunrise." Amara's chest tightened. Panic surged through her veins. She grabbed her phone, called the security team, the workshop supervisor, even Mr. Adebayo. No one had seen him. She drove to the uncompleted building on Lekki, Ape Expressway where she had first met him. His wooden shelter was empty, abandoned. She searched bus parks, roadside mechanic shops, under bridges, everywhere she could think of. Days became weeks. And with each passing day, Amara felt something inside her breaking. Because she finally understood what she had been too afraid to admit. She wasn't just worried about Tunde. She was in love with him. 3 weeks passed like years. Amara went through the motions of her life. Board meetings, contract signings, oil field inspections. But her mind was always somewhere else. Searching, wondering, aching. At night, she lay awake in her luxury penthouse, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation she'd had with Tunde. Every smile, every glance, every moment she had convinced herself was just kindness, just charity, just doing the right thing. But it wasn't. It had never been just that. Her assistant noticed. Her driver noticed. Even her board members noticed the change in her. The fire that once drove Amara oil and gas forward had dimmed. She was present, but not there. One morning, her company driver, Uncle Joseph, approached her carefully after dropping her at the office. "Madam, I know suppose talk," he began hesitantly. "But, that boy way disappear. I think I see him." Amara's heart stopped. "Where?" "Yesterday, I day pass one construction site for Aja. I see someone way resemble am. Carrying cement blocks. I know sure, but, the way the person move, the body shape. I think na him." Amara didn't wait. She grabbed her car keys and drove straight to Aja. The construction site was chaos. Dust everywhere. Workers shouting instructions. The skeletal frame of a new residential complex rising from the red earth. Amara stepped out of her Range Rover, ignoring the stares from laborers who had never seen a woman in a designer suit walk onto their site. And then she saw him. Tunde. He was carrying 2 heavy cement blocks, one stacked on each shoulder, his shirt soaked through with sweat. His face was leaner, darker from the sun. His hands were covered in cement dust and small cuts. He looked exhausted. Broken. Amara's breath caught in her throat. Tunde. He froze mid-step. The blocks slipped from his shoulders and thudded onto the ground. Slowly, he turned around. Their eyes met. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The noise of the construction site faded into the background. There was only the two of them, standing in the dust and the heat, the space between them heavy with everything unsaid. "Why did you leave?" Amara's voice cracked. Tunde looked away. "I didn't belong there." "That's not true." "It is." His voice was bitter. "Every day, people looked at me like I was dirt. Like I was using you. Like I was a mistake you made that you'd regret." He turned back to face her, pain flooding his eyes. And maybe they were right. "They weren't," Amara said, stepping closer. "They don't know anything." "Then what do they not know?" Tunde's voice rose, frustration spilling over. "That I'm just a homeless boy you picked up from the road? That I have nothing to offer you? That every time I sat across from you at lunch, I felt like a fraud pretending to be someone I'm not?" "You're not a fraud," Amara said, her own voice shaking now. "You're one of the most honest people I've ever met." Tunde shook his head. "Honest. I left without saying goodbye because I was too scared to tell you the truth." "What truth?" The words hung in the air. Tunde took a breath, and when he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "That I fell in love with you." Amara froze. "And I knew." Tunde continued, his voice breaking, "that loving you was the most foolish thing I could ever do. Because what do I have to give you? A woman who owns oil fields? Who commands boardrooms? Who could have any man she wants?" He laughed bitterly. "I'm nothing, Amara. And you're everything." The construction workers had stopped to watch now. A small crowd gathered at a distance, curious about the billionaire woman and the laborer who seemed to know each other. Amara stepped forward until she was standing right in front of him, close enough to see the pain etched into his face, close enough to see the tears he was fighting to hold back. "You think you're nothing?" she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "You fixed my car when no one else could. You refused money because you believed kindness should be free. You studied every night after working all day because you wanted to be better. You left because you thought it would protect me from scandal." Her voice broke. "Tunde, You're not nothing. You're everything I didn't know I needed. Tunde stared at her, his chest heaving. I fell in love with you too, Amara whispered. And I've been searching for you every single day since you left. The construction site went silent. And then, in front of all those watching workers, Amara wrapped her arms around Tunde and held him tight. She didn't care about the cement dust that stained her expensive suit. She didn't care about the whispers, or the stares, or what anyone would say. She only cared that she had found him. Tunde broke down in her arms, his body shaking with sobs he had held in for weeks. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize, Amara said, pulling back to look at him. Just don't leave me again. He nodded, unable to speak. Amara took his hand and led him to her car. The site's supervisor tried to protest. He hasn't finished his shift. But one look from Amara silenced him. She drove Tunde to a boutique in Lekki and bought him new clothes. Then she took him to her cousin Ngozi's real estate office. Ngozi handed Tunde the keys to a fully furnished 2-bedroom apartment in a secure estate. This is yours, Amara said. Not as charity, as an investment. In your future. Tunde stared at the keys, overwhelmed. I can't accept this. You already did when you came back into my life, Amara said firmly. Now listen. You're not going back to the workshop as a cleaner. I'm going to sponsor you to start your own auto diagnostics business while you continue your studies. You'll work for yourself. Build something that's yours. Why are you doing all this? Tunde asked, his voice thick with emotion. Amara smiled. Because I love you. And because the world needs to see what I see when I look at you. But that wasn't the twist. 1 year later, Tunde was thriving. His auto diagnostics workshop, Tunde's Touch, had become one of the most trusted in Lagos. He was in his second year at Yabatech, studying mechanical engineering, and his reputation for honesty and skill had spread across the city. Amara picked him up after classes one evening, and they drove to a quiet spot overlooking the lagoon. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. They sat on the hood of her car, shoulders touching, watching the water shimmer. I need to tell you something, Tunde said quietly. Amara turned to him, concerned. What is it? He took a deep breath. The night you found me on the expressway, it wasn't an accident. Amara's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Tunde looked down at his hands. I had been watching you for weeks. Amara's heart skipped a beat. I lived in that uncompleted building, Tunde continued. And every night, around the same time, I'd see your car pass by on your way home from work. I noticed you because you always drove alone. No security convoy. No show. Just you. He paused. And one night, I heard your car struggling. The engine sounded wrong. I knew something was about to fail. Amara's mouth went dry. So that night, Tunde said, his voice trembling, I loosened your battery terminal wire just enough that it would disconnect when you hit a bump. I waited across the street. And when your car died, I came to help you. The silence that followed was deafening. Amara stared at him, her mind reeling. You sabotaged my car. Yes. Tunde's eyes filled with tears. I was desperate. Starving. I thought maybe if I helped you, you'd give me money for food. That's all I wanted. Just enough to eat for a few days. He turned to face her fully, his expression raw with shame and honesty. But then you tried to pay me, and I saw something in your eyes. Respect. Curiosity. And I couldn't take your money. Because suddenly, it wasn't about survival anymore. It was about not disappointing the first person in years who looked at me like I was human. Amara sat frozen, processing everything. I'm telling you now, Tunde said, his voice breaking. Because I can't build a life with you on a lie. I love you too much for that. And if this changes everything, if you can't forgive me, I'll understand. But you deserve to know the truth. The sun dipped below the horizon. Darkness began to settle over the water. Amara finally spoke, her voice quiet. You sabotaged my car, and then fixed it perfectly. You manipulated the situation, and then refused payment. You deceived me, and then built your entire second chance on honesty and hard work. Tunde nodded, tears streaming down his face. Amara turned to look at the water, her mind spinning through every moment of their journey. The highway, the office, the construction site, the love that had grown between them. And then, slowly, she began to laugh. Not cruelly, but with something close to wonder. What? Tunde asked, confused. You know what the twist is? Amara said, turning back to him with tears in her own eyes. I knew. Tunde's breath caught. What? I figured it out months ago, Amara said softly. I had my mechanic inspect the car the next day. He found finger marks on the terminal. Fresh disturbance. He said it looked intentional. She smiled through her tears. I knew someone had tampered with it. And when I thought about who, there was only one person it could have been. Then why? Tunde couldn't finish the sentence. Because, Amara said, reaching out to cup his face in her hands. I fell in love with who you became after that moment. Not who you were before it. You could have robbed me that night. Hurt me. But instead, you fixed my car and refused money. You could have stayed silent and kept the job. But instead, you just told me the truth, risking everything. She leaned her forehead against his. That's the man I love. The one who chooses honesty even when it costs him everything. Tunde sobbed openly now, and Amara held him as the night deepened around them. I love you, he whispered. I love you too, Amara whispered back. And I forgive you. For all of it. They sat there, two souls who had found each other on a dark highway. One searching for survival, the other searching for something real in a world of pretense. And together, they had found both. Sometimes, love finds us in the most unexpected places. It doesn't care about status, wealth, or the judgments of others. True love sees beyond the surface and recognizes the heart beneath. Amara and Tunde's journey reminds us that everyone deserves a second chance, that honesty, even when it's painful, is the foundation of real connection, and that the greatest wealth we can possess is the courage to love someone despite what the world might say. Never let society decide